welcoming Chairman Inez Tenenbaum.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate your inviting me, and Brent, thank you for that very kind introduction, and thank you for your leadership during these transformative times for your industry as well as the whole consumer product safety industry. I appreciate the invitation to join you today. It's the first time I've ever been to this casino, and when I walked in, I told Matt Hauser, holy cow, this was really something. And thank you for this Child Safety Advocate plaque. I will always cherish this and think of the many times that we've had to work together over the last few years. The last time I was in Connecticut was in February, and 22 inches of snow fell around the house in which I was staying. So it was nice to come in this morning, fly in from Washington, and not have any snow and have the roads clear. But it's always great to be in Connecticut. It's one of the most beautiful states I've ever visited. Joining me today from the CPSC is Matt Hauser, who is the Chief of Staff at the CPSC and has been with me throughout my entire tenure as the Chairman. His counsel to me has been invaluable, and his commitment to the mission of the CPSC has been steadfast. So thank you, Matt, for coming with me today and working with me over the last 4 years. These have been an incredible 4 years as chairman. There have been so many changes, so many positive changes, so many challenges that confronted me when I came in 2008. But I can say that today the CPSC does stand as the global leader in consumer product safety. We have advanced the cause of consumer safety so far, and I believe that people really have faith in the institution of this agency and the institution of the federal government in terms of protecting them. Today, industries like yours have evolved and have kept pace with the changes in product safety. What you have done in the last 4 years has been incredible, and I think all of your consumers are better off for it. Your association stepped up to the plate and played a leading role on the ASTM F15 subcommittee that created the first national safety standard for children's jewelry. Think about it. This was the first national standard. And I can still remember when Brent and Jim Hegney and Anthony DeGeorge and Roger Descharme and Robert Headley came to visit me in Bethesda, Maryland, where our offices are. It was in December 2011, and the new jewelry standard had just been approved. I remember the pride that they all expressed about the effort that went into the development of that standard. And as I hope all of you know, Brent has chaired that subcommittee. I appreciated how cooperatively Brent and the subcommittee members worked with the CPSC technical staff who contributed new research on the children's exposure to cadmium, which Brent just discussed with you and which this video sets forth. And I said this in 2011, and I'll say it again today. I believe that the ASTM F2923 standard is a quality standard, and I believe it is a child protective standard. The standard is based on sound science, and it proactively addresses many of the toxic metals that I have been concerned about just beyond, that goes beyond lead and cadmium. The standard also addresses hazards that can arise in children's jewelry from magnets and batteries and the risk of strangulation. The standard is creating a positive change in the industry and the marketplace. So a look back at the history shows that change was needed. During the 7 years leading up to the development of the jewelry standard, the CPSC announced more than 50 recalls of more than 180 million units of children's jewelry due to high levels of lead. Of course, 150 in the 180 million units involved the recall of vending machines jewelry, which is still the biggest recall in our history. In 2010, cadmium made headlines as we issued 5 recalls of jewelry due to excessive levels of toxic metals. But the media headlines failed to recognize that in 2010, it was a different time in terms of the agency than prior years. It was a different time for the CPSC, and it was a different time for your industry. For starters, surface coatings and content limits for lead have been put in place through our implementation of the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act. The CPSIA had just established cadmium and toxic metal limits for children's jewelry, and there was recognition that jewelry needed similar limits. What also changed was the CPSC's approach to handling emerging hazards. As chairman, I decided early on to take a more proactive role in addressing emerging hazards. Not to wait to get the phone call from the AP, but go ahead and look at the data and see if we could address it as we receive the data. So in January 2010, I was determined not to let cadmium be the next lead. I told regulators and I told manufacturers at the APEC conference in Hong Kong to stop any substitution of lead and other harmful metals in the production of children's products. A few weeks later, AQSIQ, our counterpart agency in Beijing, sent a similar message to Chinese manufacturers. And today, I just learned from Brent that the Chinese have come out with their own standard. So on the enforcement side, our import surveillance team worked with Customs and Border Protection to inspect children's jewelry. And we turned back a shipment of violative jewelry that had excessive cadmium. We also stayed vigilant in the marketplace, expanding our lead surveillance program to include cadmium. The global system of safety that we established, along with the jewelry standards going into effect, have shifted the trend lines back into the right direction. So here is some proof. Since 2010, we have not had a recall because of excessive cadmium. Since 2010, we have not had a recall of excessive cadmium. Since 2011, we have just had a handful of jewelry recalls due to excessive lead. In 2011 and 2012, we have performed nearly 19,000 screenings of various products of cadmium, and we only found 5 pieces of children's jewelry that raised a red flag. That is remarkable. In 2011, we did a major marketplace surveillance program and screened 711 pieces of children's metal jewelry, 711. These results were promising, but showed that continued vigilance is needed. Corrective action was needed for 3 of the models due to a high level of lead. 11 items were addressed at the retail level, and 15 items with high lead were determined not to be children's products. And that's where sometimes we get the bad press for cadmium and lead, because sometimes it might be a piece of jewelry that would appeal to a child, but is clearly an adult product. And of the 711 items screened, only 8 were found to have more than 300 parts per million of cadmium. Now that is noteworthy. Only 8 out of 711 items that were screened. But those items were either not children's products, had less than 200 micrograms of extractable cadmium, or the items were old and had no documentation of purchase. We went back to 2012 and conducted another marketplace surveillance program, but this time we looked at low-cost jewelry. Of the 217 items we screened by XRF, none contained extractable cadmium above the 200 micrograms limit, and just 4 were found to have more than 100 parts per million of lead, which we took appropriate action to address. So at the ports and in the marketplace, we are finding a low rate of samples that require further laboratory testing. And we are finding an even lower rate of samples that, once tested, violate the CPSIA's lead limits or the ASTM F2923 cadmium limits. So progress is being made by your industry. And we are going to post these remarks on our website so that you can refer people to this address, and you can take pride in the fact that this industry has stepped up and made tremendous progress by, number 1, developing a standard, and number 2, getting the lead and cadmium at either out or very low levels in your product. I know that you are committed to compliance. I had the opportunity to speak to many of you today, and I know that you are not going to let your guard down. And it's very encouraging to know that you also today announced that you will have an adult standard for adult jewelry. That, if that standard in harmony with the children's standard it goes into effect, then you will not have people saying, well, this is a children's product, this is an adult product, but you'll have the whole industry in compliance. We had children like Jarnell Brown and Colton Burkhart and other children who suffered internal injuries to be our constant reminder that we must achieve the highest standard of safety in jewelry and accessory products. And I know that you are committed to doing that and to making your products safe. So although I know you're working on the ASTM committee on a regular basis, and we don't have a technical representative on that subcommittee, I know how active this subcommittee is, and we look forward to working with you in anything that we can do to help in the development of the adult standard and go forward in that capacity. You know that we're only here to help you. I'm also fully aware that the association is closely tracking proposed jewelry standards in various states that Brent went over for you right now. So although I'm not going to comment on legislative proposals in the individual states, I want to continue to support a national consensus ASTM standard. I believe, as you do, that we should harmonize the federal voluntary standard with state standards. And to date, I have yet to see scientific research proving that the total content level is necessary rather than a solubility standard. So now, during my remaining time with you, I want to discuss two additional issues. First is my future as chairman of the CPSC, and second is what is the rest of my safety agenda at the CPSC for the months that I will remain here and the years to come. I grew up in rural Georgia, and frequently on Friday afternoons I'd go home with a cousin or a friend to spend the night. And we would be having such a great time playing with each other that when my mother would come on Saturday to take me home, we'd say, please let me stay another night, let me stay a night. My mother always had these words of advice, no matter where I was: don't ever outstay your welcome. So I had the opportunity to be reappointed to a 7-year term as chairman, but I let President Obama know that although I was very grateful to be chairman for 4 years, that I did not want another term. I just don't think anyone should overstay their welcome in any venue, both professionally or personally. So I announced in February at the ICPHSO conference that I'd asked President Obama not to renominate me, and my term is over in October. I plan to stay on as chairman, however, until my successor is nominated by the President and approved by the Senate, so that I can be sure that the CPSC is in safe hands and that all the ongoing work that we started continues. I have been assured by the White House that my successor will be someone who truly believes in the mission of the agency, and that is to protect consumers, and that will not let the ball drop and not go back to an agency that was always reacting and not being proactive. Because I just think that that is the way of the future, to look at emerging hazards, to work with the Voluntary Standards Committee, to address hazards, and to help industry reach their full potential. There were so many wonderful people who wanted, and deserving people, who wanted to serve in this president's administration as well as other presidents' administrations. And I'll always be grateful that of the many people who wanted to be chairman of the CPSC, that he gave me the opportunity to serve in his administration. It's been a great privilege, and it has been an incredible experience traveling all over the world, meeting with people, meeting with industry, talking to people about product safety. It was a field that, although I'd practiced law and done environmental law and a great deal of administrative law, I had really not been an expert in. And it's because of the many talented, experienced people at the CPSC that I have been successful. It has been greatly enhanced by working with industries like yours, industries like our sponsors, and I will leave in October. And if we don't have a chairman by October, you know I carry over for another year. But I'm hopeful that I will have a replacement by October. I commute from South Carolina every week. I get up at 4 o'clock on Mondays, catch the 6:30 flight, fly into Washington, work all week, and go home on Fridays. And so I am ready to pass the baton to someone with a great deal of energy and vigor and ready to tackle all the new issues. But it's been incredible. I walked in and the CPSC was just a year old. CPSA, was just a year old. We had all these rules yet to be done. And one of the things when I started meeting with industry is please let us know what you're going to do on these rules. We want predictability. And in my conversations today, I talked to many of you who said, now we know what to do. We can comply if we know what to do. And we've put out 40 final rules in just 4 years. It is in over 200 federal registered notices. It has been remarkable what this small agency has accomplished by working with our stakeholders in just the 4 years. As I say, it has been incredible. It's been a wild and woolly ride in terms of all the work that we've done. Everyone is exhausted at the commission, as well as the attorneys who represent you, as well as the industry. But look what we've accomplished, and then look what we can do as we go forward in the next few years. There is still so much work to do at the CPSC, and I thought you might want to know what the agenda is that I am going to try hard to accomplish between now and the time I leave, and then pass it off to the next chairman. Leading off in terms of a big agenda item is our import surveillance program. So as the President has stated on many occasions, manufacturing is making a comeback in the United States. And that comeback should not be slowed down by foreign manufacturers and domestic importers who seek a competitive advantage by sacrificing safety. Any company, domestic or foreign, seeking to do business in our marketplace should adhere to the same performance standards. And I believe that American manufacturers deserve a level playing field. So exporters who do not achieve safety at the source are on notice that they face a CPSC that is standing guard on the front lines. Well-trained port and field investigators are using state-of-the-art technology to detect and detain violative imports from toys and to fireworks to lighters to mattresses. Our port investigators are standing arm in arm with the inspectors at the Customs and Border Protection. CBP is one of the best agencies in the government, and we are so proud to be co-located at the Commercial Targeting and Analysis Center in Washington and it ports from coast to coast. Working together, CPSC and the CBP staff prevented more than 4 million units of violative and hazardous imports from ending up on store shelves during the last fiscal year. But as great a job as our import surveillance team does, we are just limited to 20 people. Now imagine there are over 300 ports of entry in the United States, and we have 20 people working with CBP that cover that vast territory. But we can't fight a fair fight with just 20 people to screen $700 billion worth of consumer products and imports, $340 billion coming from China. The more eyes we have on incoming shipments and the more hands we have on potentially violative samples, the safer American consumers will be and the more level the playing field will be for compliant trade. The lack of resources available to the CPSC to conduct import surveillance is just not acceptable from my point of view. And it's not acceptable for industry, and it's certainly not acceptable for the CPSC. CPSC's presence at the ports represent 0.057% of the number of FDA inspectors located at ports around the country, and we have a mission equal to the size of the FDA. We need more resources to do inspections and carry out the import mandate in the CPSIA. The CPSIA directed us to create a risk assessment methodology, commonly known as the RAM, to identify imported products that are likely to be violative. We followed this mandate, and we have a pilot RAM targeting system that integrates data from the CPSC's internal systems with data collected with CBP and is turned over to us. The RAM pilot is aimed at early detection and targeting of high-risk products and repeat offenders. So if it's a high-risk product, if it's a repeat offender, or if it's an importer that we have on which we have no history, we look at them to make sure that the shipment is in compliance. The result, if we were to achieve the full potential of the program, would be CPSC being able to electronically analyze 100% of incoming import line entries designated as a high priority. Now in the current budget environment, it is a challenge to achieve this result, but I believe American families want the CPSC to be proactive in keeping dangerous products out of their homes, and this means inspecting more products at the ports than we now are doing. Although we're still operating this limited proof of concept, a recently completed study by our Office of Import Surveillance demonstrated that the pilot RAM system was effective in identifying violative and hazardous consumer products at ports of entry. By also identifying low-risk importers and manufacturers who supply consistently compliant products, which could still include many of you in this room, the CPSC can allow them to reduce review at importation and facilitate the flow of legitimate trade. Now, this can result in a reduction in port processing time and a savings of cost. Preliminary results indicate that 90% of the shipments that are reviewed that we know are from compliant importers, we can review them and release them in the same day. That is 90% of the products. So the number of samples obtained from 100 entries examined more than doubled while maintaining the same percentage of violation in our RAM system. This increase in productivity is a direct result of visibility that the RAM provides to investigators performing risk-based targeting. I am hitting the wrong button up here, so you're getting a slideshow rant. Sorry about that. My notebook is on top of your PowerPoint. In addition to providing details about the types and products and companies involved, the RAM analyzes each shipment's risk based on the criteria that we developed. Now, my administration has made it one of our top priorities to increase the funding of our RAM program. And more staff will mean a stronger RAM, and a stronger RAM will help CPSC become an even more proactive regulator. So I'm going to be asking Congress for an increase in funding for our RAM program, and I need your support because we all want to make sure that products that are not violative come through the port, are released the same day, and you're able to get these products onto store shelves. Facilitating the legitimate flow of trade and moving compliance products to the system faster is good for industry, and it also helps our investigators focus on which are the high-risk products and where do we need to screen more closely. I believe this is a winning approach, and it's an approach to ensure that a level playing field for trade, and I hope that many of you will express your support for the increase in our RAM project. So in the remaining time that I have with you today, let me discuss what some of the other projects are that affect other industries, because I thought you might be interested. So the first, and I've talked to some of you today about this, I've spoken to some of you today about the upholstered furniture flammability standard that promotes the use of barrier technology and does not require the use of flame retardant chemicals that can slow down and prevent deadly fires. We are hosting a meeting next week at our Testing and Evaluation Center in an effort to move forward in establishing consistent and reliable fire testing procedures. And this will be looking at barriers that will help retard the spread of fire in furniture. Another project on which we're working is carbon monoxide, which is an invisible deadly killer. So we have worked with the University of Alabama and the National Institute for Standards and Technology on a gas generator engine that emits lower levels of carbon monoxide, increases the escape time for families so that if they are in a home where carbon monoxide is present, they will have more time to exit the home because they'll have less carbon monoxide coming from the generators. The potential to save lives is there, and we need the know-how and the will of industry to make it happen. Another project is window coverings. I will continue to speak out and encourage families with young children to go cordless with the blinds and shades in their homes. And when it comes to child safety, going cordless is the position of this commission. It is the position of consumer advocates, and it's the position of the Industry's Education Council. Consumers should know that they can walk into a major box retailer and a specialty store and find cordless options and blinds and shades with accessible cords. And I believe that the innovators, many of whom I met with the three top industry in the United States for manufacturing window coverings, are willing to go into a cordless phase and chart the future of their industry. Two other products on which we're focusing are ATVs and ROVs. Now, all-terrain vehicles, or ATVs, and ROVs are recreational off-highway vehicles. And if you're from a rural state like I am, both of these products are very popular. The staff is working on separate rulemaking on both of these projects, but both of these off-road vehicles are involved in far too many incidents each year, and they result in so many deaths and so many life-altering injuries. We continue to work to make these products safer and educate riders and families about the risks that they pose. Safer play in youth sports and reducing brain injuries is also high on my list. So I initiated a great program last year with the National Football League and others in the football safety community to accelerate the much-needed change in the safety culture of football. It was inspiring to be with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and the youth players in Akron, Ohio during the Hall of Fame weekend to celebrate the kickoff of this program last year. The program provides helmets assistance, like new helmets or helmets being reconstructed, to economically disadvantaged youth teams, but only if they agree to an education program that reduces the risk of brain injury. This has been a great example of the power of a public-private partnership, and I am looking forward to the NFL and the National Football and the American Football League working with us to expand this program in future years so that we can help more youth teams get safer helmets. Safer play is smarter play, and it's also the future of youth sports. And if you will just look at the attention that not only our action has brought to the playing of football, whether it's professional football, college football, high school, or youth league football, there are new rules about the way you can tackle and head injuries to prevent head injuries if you pay attention to football as much as I do. Lowering the child drowning rate and maintaining a zero death rate for drain entrapments in pools will drive our Pool Safely 2013 education campaign. This is a goal that Congress set out when they passed the Virginia Graham-Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act, and we worked very hard on pool and spa safety. We've also worked very hard to reduce the number of child drownings through our Pool Safely education program. We will also help affected companies to understand and comply with the continuous testing rule. And I see on your agenda this afternoon that you have a whole section on continuous product testing. And this went into effect earlier this month. But the periodic testing rule is intended to fulfill two promises: a promise that Congress made to parents and a promise that the CPSC made to children that under my leadership when we adopted the third-party testing requirements. The need for independent testing of children's products periodically during the manufacturing process to help continue compliance is not only a good manufacturing practice, it is absolutely a great necessity. It's a necessity for safety. Now, using the CPSC's enforcement powers wisely will continue to be our priority as long as I am the chairman. Companies that report on time are responsive to our letters of advice. You know, we write you a letter of advice telling you when you are violating one of the rules or violating a standard. And if you agree to a corrective action program, you're going to be treated fairly. There's no reason to get in an adversarial position immediately with the CPSC when we send you a letter of advice or that you have manufactured a product that's not in compliance. But the companies who fail to report on time, when they know that they have a violation, they've had consumer injury, or if you decline to the terms of a corrective action plan, or if you ignore repeatedly a letter of advice, which, believe it or not, some companies do, you're going to feel the effects of our enforcement team because you leave us no other option when you refuse to cooperate. We have civil penalties, we have stop sales, we have administrative lawsuits that under my tenure we have chosen to use. We have health and safety warnings that companies work with us to issue. But these are the authorities that the Commission has, and we will use them seriously and we use them judiciously. Anyone that is subject to a fine or administrative lawsuit has really just decided that they will not work with us on what we see as a way forward to protect the consumer. And as you can see, it's going to be a robust agenda to the end. It's an agenda aimed at making 2013 even more successful than 2012. We are on a pace to make 2013 another successful year, especially if everyone joins together to strengthen our product safety system. At the CPSC, we really are up to the challenge, and it doesn't matter that when I leave, I'll pass the baton to someone else. We're going to have so many of these projects teed up because we want to work with industry so that we have buy-in and we're ready to go on so many of these great challenging projects. We have very limited resource being a small agency, but we sure do have a lot of short and long-term gains given our small resource, because we use our power and we use our focus wisely. I believe that all of you are up to the challenge to work with us too. You certainly have shown it by stepping up to the plate, creating this subcommittee on children's jewelry, now coming up with a standard for adult jewelry, because it shows me that you are willing to work with us and that you really have the safety of your consumers at heart. I believe that collectively working together, we build a global product safety system that supports and empowers the future generations to fulfill their potential. And again, it's just been wonderful to be with you, and I just appreciate the opportunity to meet with you personally and have the conversations I had this morning when we arrived early here. I hope that in the next few months that we'll continue to work together and we can achieve great things, not only for your industry, but for the consumers that I know we all want to protect. Thank you very much for your hospitality.